Hi, I'm Marty Walsh, and I want to thank Toy Burton and DeeDee's Cry for the incredible work they do in the Boston community all year long. And I want to thank all of them for organizing this event today. Mental health is just as important as physical health, and seeking and accepting help is a sign of strength. That's especially true right now. The pandemic has added a whole new set of challenges to everyday life. For people who were struggling before, it can even be harder to manage this added weight. I'm here to tell you it's okay to feel fear and anxiety. We'll feel that for some time. This is an important time to take care of yourself. We're all handling this the best we can. And the only thing we can do is take one day at a time. If you need someone to talk to, you have options. You can call your healthcare provider to get set up with a telehealth counselor. Or you can call 311 at the city, our hotline, to get connected to anonymous counseling over the phone. I know that DeeDee's Cry is going to share some important resources with you today. I want to thank the panelists for coming together and sharing their stories. In times like these, it's important to support one another and find ways to connect. I wish you all the very best, and I thank you for creating a positive change in our community.
Good afternoon, or actually good evening, everyone. My name is James Hills. I'm the host of Java with Jimmy and also the digital director for DeeDee's Cry. First, we want to begin and say Happy Black History Month to all of the Black people. This year, I think more than most, Black History Month stands out like it has not before. We are blacker than black, than black, than black, than black, than black. And with that, definitely, Nyell. With that comes, and I've talked to someone who's a part of this family this morning, with that comes a lot of generational trauma, a lot of trauma that some would say is compounded and exponentially in our DNA based on what we've went through as a people. And so we're here tonight for the third iteration of Mental Health While Black, being sponsored by DeeDee's Cry. What we would like to do, and I'm going to keep it 100 with you all. I'm playing moderator and digital director tonight, so we're going to try to keep everything together. But we want to make sure that we thank our sponsors that made it possible this evening. Of course, DeeDee's Cry. You'll hear from our founder in just a few moments. We would like to thank the Roxbury Unity Parade, yours truly, Java with Jimmy, and also the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute. And we would like to give a special thanks to Callaway Graphics for designing the flyer and all of the technical support that they give to DeeDee's Cry. It is my pleasure at this time to introduce Toy Burton. She is the founder and executive director of DeeDee's Cry, and please give her your attention at this time.
Oh, dope. That's dope.
I'm trying.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Toy Burton, and I am the founder and executive director of DeeDee's Cry Suicide Prevention and Family Support. DeeDee's Cry is named after my sister who died by suicide when she was 23 years old in 1986. Her name was Denita Shayne Morris. I started DeeDee's Cry in 2017 after I noticed organizations that focus on suicide prevention and mental health didn't have their events and outreach in the Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan neighborhoods of Boston, where I'm from. So I felt like I needed to do an organization that's accessible to people of color and that focus on mental health, education, and suicide prevention. So like James said, this is our third installment of Mental Health While Black. We started Mental Health While Black in 2019, December of 2019, which was part one. I knew then that it was going to be a series and it wasn't going to be one and done. This is a conversation that needs to keep going. We have these conversations, invite people to share their stories, because DeeDee's Cry believes that when we share our stories, we chip away at the stigma that surrounds mental health in communities of color. So I do want to thank the panelists this evening that are here to share their stories and to let people know that they are not alone and they're not the only ones. And hopefully their stories will empower somebody this evening. And I would turn it back to you, James.
Yes, you would.
Okay.
Now, Lord Jesus, Toy is our director, and she said, "I turn it back to you, James." Yes,
I know.
it's going to come back to me, and I have the opportunity to introduce our operations director or director of operations, Dr. Brandy Brooks, who will give us some context to why we're here today. And then after her, our panelists will introduce themselves, and we will get right into our stories and really talking about mental health while Black. Dr. Brandy Brooks.
Hey everyone, happy Black History Month, February 1st, 2021. Before I get started this evening, I'd first like to echo what Toy said, thank the panelists for being here this evening, for sharing their stories, sharing of their time. And I thank all of you for joining us, tuning in, and sharing your comments as we go on throughout the evening. So before I really get started, provide a little context, I always start with a disclaimer. Even though the impact may be felt differently, depression, suicidality, or struggling with mental health challenges impacts every community. It doesn't respect your race, your socioeconomic status, your age, any of that. But tonight, what we're here to discuss and fully and completely debunk is this false narrative that this does not happen in our community. We don't do that. And I open with this because many that may be watching or listening right now, you may be personally impacted by this topic. And so remember, as we go along, we're sharing our stories and we're sharing information, we're sharing resources. If at any point anything we discuss hits a little bit too close to home for you, please feel free to step away from your phone, step away from your computer monitor, and take a moment, breathe, collect your thoughts, and then come back into this space, because we want you to be able to fully engage and fully listening. And sometimes if your emotions are heightened, you are unable to do so. So again, tonight is about sharing the stories, but if you need help, please reach out. Something that Toy always says when she shares her story is that her sister's cries went unheard. We want you to know tonight, anyone listening, anyone watching, we hear you, we see you, we don't want you to suffer in silence. So please, please, please reach out. Okay. So to start with, James kind of hinted on this, but to say that it's an exponentially tough time for Black people in America would be an understatement. And so that's why protecting the mental health of our community is vital. We are in the middle of a pandemic. We are in the middle of historic unemployment. We are in the middle of civil unrest. There are just so many factors toppled upon one another that this topic matters. And it matters so much more because today is the start of Black History Month. And so just briefly, I want to say this. Black lives matter, okay? Black lives matter. And that means that Black mental health has to matter too. So one thing we know is that Black people are 7 times more likely to live in areas with limited access to mental health care. We know that there's a shortage of Black mental health providers, and we know that only 1/3 of Black people who need treatment actually receive the treatment that they need. And I was actually reading a study earlier today with respect to the vaccine rollout and how it's been disproportionately rolled out in particular communities. And so what we know from just this little brief snapshot of data is that this increase of not seeking services, not having services, or not feeling like you should reach out for services, it increased heightened risk in our community. And so we need to, with these conversations, with our individual professional lives, we need to continue to understand and make sure it's important that we pour into ourselves. We pour into our mental health because it is so important. It is so vital. And so I'll pause there because I know I'll come back a little bit later in the evening. So I'll pause there and then turn it over to the speakers because I'd really like to get into their stories at this point.
And Dr. Brandy, we're going to jump right in. What I'm going to do is ask our speakers, all three of them, to briefly introduce themselves, and then we will go into the stories. So Nyell, if we can start with you, if you could introduce yourself, give us your title, and one word that describes your mental health status today. Icebreaker type.
Great.
And then we'll come back.
Thanks so much for having me. It's always a privilege to be able to come into spaces with like-minded people to have these very important conversations. My name is Nyell Judy, and in this season, I'm a mindfulness and meditation coach and a certified yoga teacher. All of the work I'm doing is to, like we said, address the trauma that pervades and is pretty much overwhelming our communities right now.
Thank you so much. And Fabienne, if you could introduce yourself as well, give your title. And Nyell, you forgot, someone put you back on the spot. Can you give us one word for how you feel your mental health status is today?
My mental health status today is stable, which I'm grateful for.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Fabienne, to you.
Sure, definitely. I want to say thank you for having me in this space. And the way that I describe myself in this space, I would say that I'm a mom, and as well with community organizer in the education space. So one word to describe my mental stages, I would say being alive right now.
Awesome, awesome. And our brother and fellow testosterone member in the room this evening. I just have to raise, we didn't call each other, but if you notice a theme of what we're all wearing today, it wasn't planned, but shout out to the yellow and the red. But Brother Raheem, please introduce yourself, tell us your title, and then we're going to come back and get into our stories with each of you.
Hello, all. I also wanted to say thank you. This opportunity is great for me, and I love speaking and sharing my story. My name is Raheem. I'm a performing arts student at Bunker Hill Community College, and one word that I would describe my mental health status right now would probably be tackling.
Tackling. Awesome. Awesome. So we're going to go right in, and I'm going to switch the order a little bit. And Fabienne, if you could get ready to begin to tell your story. Toy alluded to it, and so did Dr. Brandy. But in the DeeDee's Cry space, we believe it's vitally important that people share their stories. It's not only helpful for them as a witness every time we share our story, but it helps someone in the community identify that they're not the only one that's going through it. And so, Fabienne, we're going to give you this time right now. If you could sort of tell us your story, I will say to our guests, the cue is when I pop back in and out and put us all on screen, that's the cue to get ready to wrap it up. But thank you so much, all of you, for being here. We're going to start with Fabienne, and then we will move on. But I'm asking those of you that are watching, even though it's not sticking that much in Boston, it's a snowy night. So what are you out doing? Take a minute and share this, and share with someone in general or someone that you know could benefit from this conversation around mental health while being Black. Fabienne, the show is yours.
Thank you, James. I have this stigma where we don't really share stories. This is the culture that, you know, being a Haitian American, so you pretty much take everything in, and that's the way that we kind of growing up. Everything stays in the house, regardless of the situation. Good, you celebrate, give a little bit, but when it's bad, it's kind of a way of hiding things. For even family members don't know. So my daughter is dyslexic, and she's a special need student since she was very early age in BPS. And with that, I'm always like, you know, asking questions and saying, okay, that's not a space. I wasn't, you know, born here. I wasn't educated here. I did my colleges and my high school here, but not elementary and middle school. So I didn't even know what was that. So I kind of educate myself and trust the system that they'll be able to help me. Unfortunately, that's not the way the school system is. Before you get help, you have to fail before they can be able to just acknowledge that, you know, you have an issue. So my daughter couldn't read. We went to different places of school, private school, tutoring, and so on. So it was really traumatized as a single parent, and then coming in in this space and where my child is not learning. And by the time to go, and she's fourth grade, and she didn't want to go to school, she was even showing that wants to hurt herself. Where in fifth grade, she drew a picture that she wants to hang herself. And I remember that was a Christmas time. I was like, couldn't believe and couldn't, everything that I'm doing. She's my only child, that I'm doing everything to help her. And then this is what my child is going through. Like, she was being bullied at school, and she understood that she couldn't read. But the fact that I reach out and I found people in my corner, Decoding Dyslexia, a friend of mine, and I can say, like, Nancy, she was a lifesaver of helping me to just go into this journey. The system doesn't design for us, for Black people, especially for Black, brown, and kids. Because if you don't speak up, you don't share your story, you don't share the issues that you're going through, you're just going to go passing through the cracks. And of that, I took that upon myself and just, help every family. I always say I'm an expert and also not an expert, because I'm learning every single day through my daughter, through every family that I encounter into that. So my daughter is in a space now where she's getting the support, she's getting help, but she's not where she needs to be. Now she also have ADHD combined, which is pretty much very intensity. She has mood disorder, she has communication disorder, and and anxiety and depression. During the whole time of COVID, it's even adding up to it. Now she was not seeing her friends, she's not active like she used to be. She's not playing sports, she's not acting, she's not dancing. All this is taking a toll on her. And then me being home with her, there's not much I can do. So she's kind of pretty much going to her stable stage. Like, I couldn't help her. I had my own issues where I couldn't even know what to do with myself. I'm always on the community, always doing something, and I'm active. And now I'm kind of in Bumble by myself. So we kind of, trying to see how we can survive this. Where I had to call her doctor to increase her medication, because there's a time she just took off. Don't know where she's going. I'm just like, listen, you cannot get out the street and things like that, because she had all this anxiety. Her anxiety was pretty bad, and she got into depression, where we were seeking help, therapy, where I even, share my story, going live and talking about the whole education system, how the kids are not making progress. The kids have a big gap, and where parents now are finding where this is, the kids cannot read, or the schools always tell them that they're doing better, or the kids are learning. But now you become a teacher, a nursing, a therapy, and everything else during this period of time. So you have to do everything. Parents are frustrated. Parents are scared. Parents are losing their job, losing family members, on top of to taking care of your child. So that was very traumatic for me. I lost family members. I lost friends. And even during this time, during the holidays, I myself got COVID. So I was like, I didn't think I was going to make it. That's what I said, being alive for me, that's something I'm very grateful, because I got it during the holidays, and I don't even know how I got it and where I got it. So not hiding this kind of from my child, because I don't want her to be traumatized. I don't want her to think about that, mommy is sick and mommy, is not going to be able to make it. And some nights I'm just like, oh my God, this is it for me. So how am I going to be able to take care of my family, or take care of my daughter? So like all this trauma, all this thing. And then even for me, I didn't even want to share my story about doing the whole COVID, because I was like, okay, this is private. But I'm wondering about, so many other family members and so many single moms that go into the same thing that I am. They're probably hiding as well. And if I don't share, or just trying to tell them, you're not in this alone, how are they going to be able to just give them a tap on the back to say they got this? So that's why I always share my story. I always tell people that you're not in it by yourself. There is hope. Just seek out the hope, and then knock every single doors, because you never know who's going to be able to help you. And I don't look at it as, and unfortunately in this school base, or education system, we don't find a lot of Black and brown teachers that can be role model for her kids. And when we do find one, we're trying to hold on so much to them and trying to just say, okay, how can you help? So I'm always looking for that opportunities to say, okay, I can help you. Let me read your IEP. Let me tell you what I think. If I cannot give you a solution, I cannot guide you. I can seek some help and I can refer you to some organization who can be able to guide you. But this is the work that I've been doing under education space. And I even have a Girl Scouts and put them in a Black and brown Girl Scout. They call themselves Daring Diva, and we are located in Roxbury. So I have about 19 girls from 7 years old all the way to 15. So they are learning, they are teaching, they are doing their marks in the community, whether they helping the homeless, teaching, about different things that they can be able to help their community. They're selling cookies, and some of the program, that money they're selling, they're trying to put it back in the community as well. So those are the things that I can try to educate families and educate kids. Just because we're in the pandemic, that doesn't mean we're going to stop of living. That doesn't mean we're going to stop of sharing the love and the support to one another. We all carry our burdens. We all going through some hard time. But at the same time, remember there's someone else who's going through that as well. You are not alone, and you probably think you're bad, but there's someone who's worse than you. So my mom always say, think about on your bad days. And that's what I always wear red. And Decoding Dyslexia color is red. So red bring you love, bring you unity, bring you happiness, bring you joy. So as sad that I can be, but I'm wearing my red just to lift others. It's not just for myself, my family, my friends, and my community, but someone who's probably going through the same thing that I'm going through. So I really want to take this opportunity to let people know that you're not in this alone. Reach out, because someone is always going to be hand out to guide you, to help you, to support you.
Fabienne, thank you so much for your transparency and sharing your story. I've seen your work in the community, and it is definitely an honor and a privilege to, in this space, hear it the way you told it and shared it. And so at this time, what we do between folks sharing their stories is we ask Dr. Brandy to just come in and identify some key themes that she heard through Fabienne's story. So our other guest, I'm just going to put Dr. Brandy and Fabienne on the screen together. Move us out, so don't get alarmed. I'm going to put us back in, and just the two of them will go ahead and just share real quick, and everybody will see in real time Dr. Brandy's observations.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story. One of the things that I heard, which I'm hearing from a lot in the school community, is just how the school closures has greatly impacted students' just ability to learn, and also as sometimes the schools being a main access point for food, main access point for the mental health resources, main access point for some of the treatment. And so it adds like this additional layer of stress to what's already a stressful situation, not just for the young people, but for the parents as well. And like, you definitely elevated that. And one thing I'm hearing from educators is this period is definitely concerning and it's challenging. And they're also concerned about, well, what's going to happen when young people go back into the schools? Like, will there be more IEPs? Will there be more diagnoses? Will, and because our young people are diagnosed and have IEPs more than other communities, that is a real concern when we talk about, the access points and making sure that our young people receive the supports and services that they need within the home and within the school. And so you definitely highlighted some of the conversations that are definitely going on and are important to elevate. It is so important to elevate. And I love how you said, when you didn't see the resources, you became the resources, and that's the piece too, is oftentimes because we don't see ourselves reflected around us, we have to advocate and become the person who becomes most educated about our issues or the issues of our loved ones. And so you definitely elevated that, and I appreciate that. And I say to anyone listening, if your cries are not being heard, sometimes you have to advocate for you because someone else may not do it for you. And that's important to remember. And so I appreciate you for sharing this story. And it is definitely important, and something we are definitely going to have to continue to pay attention to is our young people who are suffering while they're at home, and then they're going to go back into schools, and are the supports and services going to be there for them?
I appreciate that, Dr. Brandy. One thing that I'll add is, like, more very often people in her community, they don't really, I've seen that they're always complaining. They always say that they need, but when it's time for them to step out of their, comfort zone, to just say, okay, they want to be part of the table, they're not getting that opportunities too. It's always the same people. Like later on, they said, okay, we're the trouble one. I don't mind to be the troublemaker. I don't have a problem to speak with my truth and then telling them the way it is if you're being wrong. Like, as of right now in Boston, probably like 2 of us who's like in a stakeholder in the whole Massachusetts for reviewing IEP with EDCO and DESI. There's so many other families members around there, but sometimes I said I want to give it up, but I said if I give it up, who's going to be able to do it?
Who else will take the mantle? And one thing just to highlight with that too is that for some, it's not that they don't want to, it's that
access
never asked to, or there are so many barriers to their participation. In terms of having to provide for their families, they can't go to the 12 o'clock meeting. Like, they have to, and so there's so many barriers to it. And so I think, it's definitely a multi-layered conversation with respect to how can we better support our young people. But I'm just so thankful that you're at the table and you're advocating for not only your child, but for everyone.
For everybody, yes.
And that's important.
Fabienne, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you so much. And it's a topic I think that will unfortunately be ongoing. And Dr. Brandy, I think we talked about this before, that, the DSM-6 is going to have probably post-pandemic, diagnoses in it. So at this time, I would like to continue to thank our other 2 panelists for their patience. Those are Nyell Judy and also Raheem Lee. At this time, I'm going to ask Nyell if she could prepare herself to begin to share her story as well. And then right after her, Dr. Brandy will come back, and then we will hear from Raheem as well. So at this time, Nyell, the show is yours.
Thanks so much. I had to think about it and write down how I could even begin to try to tackle my own personal story with mental health. And the way I want to start this conversation off is transparently. It's a daily battle, and it will always be. And that is something that I had to come to terms with once I started to do the work. I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression around 17 years old, and that was just from a snowball effect of environmental challenges. And to speak to some very specifically that impact why I landed here, is I'm also Haitian American, and education was a big thing for us. So my mom always pushed me into spaces where I was the only child of color, which, yes, put me in that advantage, to some degree in terms of having access to certain levels of education. But the social implications really, till this day, have a residual effect on me. And it really impacted my mental health, my ability to see myself as, worthy, or to, we've all spoken to some degree, know how to advocate for myself and to say what was happening and how it was presented specifically as a teenager or young adult was aggressively and really inappropriately for a young woman. I had these 2 sides that I would kind of operate in. And over time, my behavior was pretty destructive in terms of how I was socializing with other people and partying a lot and just not taking care of my core. Eventually, I'm very big into the mind, body, spirit connection. It's all that I teach about from an energy space. And there was a point in time where I was so out of balance that I wasn't functioning anymore. People didn't even know I still lived in the city of Boston. I was pretty much going to work, abusing some type of a substance, whether it was having too much wine or smoking, and then just coming home and sleeping. And around 29, 30 years old, that just felt incorrect to me because I'm still so young and had so much life to live. So it started with honestly going to see a primary care physician. I was working in the public schools as a paraprofessional at the time, Boston Public Schools. And the way that I witnessed all of the things that Fabienne spoke to from a personal space really put a fire in me. And I was always in the community doing things because, you know, I was raised by a family that believes in giving back. So we always have had, my entire family is in social services. So even if it was periods of time where I was in the community after being a para, I was dead set, convinced that our kids needed tools, that our kids needed access to peace, that they deserved way more than the school system was offering them. In a space where I had about 70 students in that grade band. I was the one Black teacher, so I was always in trouble. I was uninvited from that space. People who know me well know I talk about it, because it was so painful for people who didn't look like my kids to push back against me a lot. So I ended up taking FMLA, and that was pretty much the most transformative thing that I did. When my primary care physician told me that I had the right to address my mental health first, I took that very seriously. And this was in about 2016, 17. And at that time, I was going to coping and healing therapy. Family members were passing. Another huge part of my battle with mental health has been I've just lost a tremendous amount of people. The pandemic also contributed to that, where within the first 3 months, there were 4 close family members, ancestors, or elders that passed very quickly. So to bring it back to my therapist and this coping and healing tool, coping and healing space I was in, the therapist was using mindful practice. And that's where it kind of started to turn for me, where I was like, what is this? And, alchemy, my journey, I was able to connect myself with teacher programs because I already had that teacher piece, and committed to finding out how I was going to be able to help heal myself primarily. What tools could I utilize? And when I say tools, I'm speaking to meditation practice, pranayama, breath practice, tapping into my yogic practice, and really very quickly recognizing that these were indigenous practices. That's why they were what was working for me. So when we talk about access and the mystification of why our people are so impacted, we also are not recognizing that we don't always necessarily need to go outward to seek this healing that we all need. Some of this is in learning about the embodiment and the integration of our body's ability to heal itself, and its natural and the world's natural tools, like going out and taking a walk in nature, which I'm a huge advocate about. And when the sun makes it available, I'm out every day. All of these things really are a part of my story. I had to embody mindfulness and meditation and yogic practice in order to really get past my mental health issues. There was no fix. There was no prescription. And I've been prescribed lots of things that just did not align with my chemical balances in my body. The one thing I do want to talk about while I have the space fully is the sound healing therapy. And I am a huge advocate for anybody who suffers specifically from anxiety, where, you're feeling a lot of unsettled energy and you're worried. That sound healing therapy is something that for the past year and a half has completely, I won't say healed it, because I still have to do the practice in order to maintain the vibration I operate in, but it is what's cutting through this really low depressive energy at all times. So I am in the community all day, as much as I possibly can, from here to Philadelphia, pushing in virtually into classrooms at this point, getting our people exposed to the tools. Like, hi, we can do this. This is accessible. And even if you can't afford it, I'm going to work with you price-wise. I'm going to work with you timing-wise. I want to be in this space because if I can heal, if I could be calm, if I can represent peace, if I can represent grace, there's not a single solitary person that I believe cannot. And that's what my life has been for, just trying to get us to come to terms with, to slow down, to build some awareness, and to be in alignment with the truth that economically we're strapped, especially as Black people in Boston and the city. I have this very conscious conversation about the social implications of us being in a state where we are just strapped in debt, regardless of a pandemic, and how that impacts the way we are even able to support each other from authentic space. And community is a big way that we are supposed to come together to heal from an intergenerational space, which is why I really try to work with young people in whole communities, because I recognize, like we were speaking to, our students are now being impacted, our children are being impacted, but the parents are also being impacted. And it's a double entendre for them because they love their children so much that it's so difficult. So to hear Fabienne's story really makes me think about my mom. And I want to thank you for the work that you've done, because if it wasn't for a mom like mine, I wouldn't be able to be where I'm at. So yeah, thank you so much for providing the space for me to get that out. It's always a release, to be honest, about like what it takes for me to be where I'm at right now.
And Nyell, in this case, it wasn't a cue necessarily for you to get ready to wrap up, but you mentioned Fabienne, and just often in this technical space, I feel myself pressing, because bringing in us as a level of support, where there's times where you're on screen by yourself and sharing, and then there's times we need to come in and let us know virtually that we got your back. And backing you up. So you as well, thank you so much for your transparency and sharing your story. There were a couple of things you said in there that affirmed some things for me today. So it was definitely, personally, I definitely appreciate it, just as James. And so Dr. Brandy, like we did before, our other guests and panelists will just exit real quick, and Dr. Brandy will give her feedback based on what she heard from some themes from Nyell as well.
You know, I think less feedback. I think one of the things that comes through your story is just kind of having your aha moment, I guess, is, you know, like the moment when the thing I heard and resonated with me was when your therapist said, you have the right to your mental health, right? And that's the thing I think oftentimes we neglect, is that, you know, when you have a physical ailment, you are quick to go say, okay, I need an aspirin, I need something, like, doctor, help me out, what's going on, you know, something ain't right. But we often don't do the same when our mental stability is off balance. And so I really just love that when the therapist said, you have the right to your mental health and your mental stability. And then you, much like you, Fabienne, before, kind of did your own journey of searching what works for you. And I like how you talked about the supports we need aren't always external. Sometimes we do need to really examine ourselves and what works for us, because what works for others may not work for us, as you talked about with medications and other things like that. And so that's the thing I think really resonates with me, and I know probably resonates with others, is, again, anybody struggling, you have the right to mental stability. You have the right to getting the support that you need and trying to find what works for you, because therapy may not work for you. It may be through yoga. It may be through mindfulness. It may be through meditation. It may be through nature and pets or any other things. And so we have to really think about what will work for us and in our schedule and in our space and in our time. And so that's really what I heard the most from what you said. And I think others can kind of heard that as well as we were listening, because I know James mentioned it.
Dr. Brandy, thank you so much. And Nyell, thank you. Your friend Charlene says hello as well. Had the pleasure of working with her. But we're going to get ready, and I'm going to put Raheem kind of on the spot here, because generally as men, we don't do well with our health. And then I was talking with Darren Howell and Carlos Enriquez earlier today. And we were talking about the importance and a little extra nudge often that men need in order to address their general routine and medical, routine preventative health care, but then in the mental space as well. So one, Sir King, thank you so much for your patience. You know, we had to put our ladies first. I'm old school.
Absolutely.
With all due respect. But I thank you for your patience. And at this time, the show is yours. We're going to turn the platform over to you to share your story. But thank you from one compiling of testosterone to another, sir, for being transparent in this space. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Jimmy. I appreciate that. Also, thank you for giving me the floor. As I said, I appreciate this opportunity. Like Nyell said, I really had to sit down and write my story out because I neglected it for so long, and I neglected the symptoms and the onset things that I was experiencing. I didn't realize any of that until basically now. So saying that, I suffer from something called SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder. It's basically a form of depression that occurs during the winter months. So for me, it pretty much starts right when fall begins and then ends when we get some April showers, May flowers type of thing. So SAD for me starts back to 2017. I'd had just left my job at a restaurant called Del Frisco's. I was pretty young. I didn't have any direction with going on with my life. I was from job to job. I didn't know what was happening. I was feeling very down and very less worthy of myself. Pretty much very agitated all the time, very moody. I didn't really want to do anything. I didn't want to look for any more jobs because I thought there was really nothing more out there for me. So saying that, once summer came, that magically just went away. So fall of 2017, I began my semester at Bunker Hill. So I became a biology major there. And this is where Dr. Brandy and I had reconnected because she's from my past. She used to teach me when I was a child, excuse me. So she'll tell you about my student background. So basically, I'm in this new program and I am lacking on my schoolwork. I am slacking a lot. I'm really tired. I don't have any energy to like do my schoolwork or do any of my labs that are occurring. So I didn't know what was really happening. So I really just started, researching about all these symptoms, feeling tired all the time, feeling depressed, not having any energy to do anything. And I was seeing online something called SAD. And now when I say I neglected this, as Jimmy was saying, as Black people, as Black men, we have to be Black, we have to be proud, and we have to be independent. There's no room to be emotional. There's no room to cry because we are the shoulder that people have to lean on. So we have to be strong because as Black people, we are not afforded the luxury of being just average. So I felt as though I had to just push through everything and I had to keep on going, and I didn't really seek out anything from anyone. And it was like fall 2018 went to 2019. I pretty much put out a broadcast Facebook post, and I basically said, these are the things that I'm dealing with. And so many people reached out to me, and I think that is something that I really needed. Dr. Brandy reached out. She was one of the first people who reached out to me. A lot of my friends who were suffering in silence reached out to me. And I just knew there were so many people inside my corner. And that was also the time where it was the worst. So all the symptoms I was experiencing in 2018 and 2017, they were times 10 now. So this is the point where I was going to bed at 6 o'clock in the morning and not waking up until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, eating everything under the sun, McDonald's, Popeyes, Burger King. And I'm just like, why do I have such a craving for all these high carbs? And, and that's generally not part of my diet. As a dancer, you have to keep, a healthy lifestyle. So these are the things that were like, I'm like, okay, this is weird. And it was happening every fall until the end of winter. And fast forward to 2020 and, coming to our pandemic, it's crazy because the pandemic was the best thing and also the worst thing for me. I'm upset that it was at the expense of other people's lives. But usually during the wintertime, I become an introvert. Social interaction becomes exhausting for me, which is usually not the case inside the summertime. I am very much an outgoing person. So the pandemic, I really had a chance to stop, and I really had a chance to think about how I wanted my life to go. And it was just me and my partner. We were under a renovation of our home, so we were really busy with that. But it was a good time for me to take care of myself and what I needed for me. As I said, so social interaction becomes very, very like anxiety inducing for me during the winter months. in activities that I'm normally indulge in all the time, I have no interest in. So now that I know, you know, this is happening to me, I can see the symptoms very, very early on when I start going to bed at like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. And this is when I have to say, no, Raheem, you can't fall inside this trap. But as Nyell was saying, it's something that I have to battle with every day. And it's something that, you know, I have to deal with on a daily basis. So that's, you know, basically my story. And I am learning new things every day about what's happening, about things to tackle what's happening with me as well. You know, it's a snowy night outside. You know, it's really pretty outside, but that's actually, you know, really bad for me. You know what I mean? So, but thank you guys very much for listening to my story.
Raheem, thank you for sharing. And again, it's with all due respect to our wonderful queens, we know that we're sometimes not as forthcoming as men in general. So I definitely appreciate that. Dr. Brandy and Raheem, I will, as we did with our other guests, just allow you right now to give some feedback. And then we're going to come back. There are some questions in the DeeDee's Cry chat. Unfortunately, we had some spammers trying to go in the comments, so I had to delete them, and I'm not able to show all of the comments here on StreamYard, but we do see them. Nyell, if you could get ready just to maybe give some clarity to sound therapy. That was one of the questions that I saw so far. But Raheem and Dr. Brandy, we will put you guys in right now.
Hey, Raheem.
Hello.
Yeah, I see how you was trying to date me and tell folk my age and stuff. But no, because we go way back.
Way back.
I remember when you shared on Facebook, and I was just so proud. I was like, oh my God. Because, you know, I used to tutor you. I've seen you grow up, you know, I've been family events and stuff. And I was so proud and also wanting to reach out and make sure you had support and services, because like you said and shared in your story, it's one thing to suffer with mental health and mental challenges. It's another thing to be a Black man suffering with those mental health challenges. And then, as you alluded to, you know, to be a Black gay man suffering with those mental health challenges, it is like a triple whammy. And, you know, and it's so important that you recognized it and then, you know, said, okay, let me start to adjust. And, you know, much like Nyell's story you hinted on, it is an everyday process. Like, I know when I reached out to you earlier, you were like, you know, this last month has been hard. And I think just acknowledging that is important, and being forthcoming. I mean, sharing your story is so important, because there really could be someone listening that says, I'm struggling in the same way too. And, you know, and just a kind of data thing, as you mentioned with seasonal affective disorder, you know, most of the times those who are impacted do have the fall to winter, but there also are some on the other side of the coin that are impacted for the summer to, you know, the fall and winter. So it can be both. And it's not just, oh, I don't want to go outside today. Like, it is in a long period where your mood changes, your diet changes, your whole behavior changes. And you really highlighted that and touched upon that. And, you know, I know when we get to the end, something I'd love for you to share, as you shared in others' context, is really about how you were able to find support and how you were able to get over that bridge and be able to say, okay, yes, this is what the data says, this is what statistics say, but how do I use that to help me get to a place of healing and hope?
Awesome. Dr. Brandy, thank you. We're going to go right to our questions. We have folks in the room who are, one, appreciating everyone who shared their stories as well. But Nyell, someone, and I just want to be honored and mention her name, is Nancy Colin, asks, wow, what is sound therapy? So can you explain for us what sound therapy is? Take come off of mute, sis. You good? You good? Listen.
Typical virtual talking before you.
Exactly.
So I use the term sound therapy because I integrate music into the therapy that I do, but sound frequency healing is a scientifically proven method that taps into the body's energy centers, right? Because I don't want to get too heightened, but we have all of our existence is energy. Our bodies are made out of energy. So when we talk from a spiritual space, if you're feeling depressed, your energy is low. You know that, right? If you're feeling joy, your energy is high. Sound frequency healing helps break up energetic and energetic residual energy that's in your space, right? So I pulled the bowl out real quick when you mentioned that, because what we're experiencing is a level of resonance that clears the prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain, that like where you think a lot and like really is either like where you're thinking very clearly, or when they say people who have a lot of trauma, their prefrontal cortex doesn't like fully work the way it should, which is why we don't make the best decisions in that moment. So the bowls are so resonant that they kind of like clear a space that you would not naturally be able to tap into. So I'm just going to ring it once so you can kind of just get a quick sense of what it sounds like. But
that would break up some depression on my point, just because I'm a musician. So I heard there's a, sorry, shout out Raheem. I mean, immediately, I mean, in real time, y'all, this is what happens, or DeeDee's cry job with Jimmy too. But I mean, I heard that. So like, we all don't have bowls, Nyell. So what, and I love the music. Let's keep it 100 most of the time. And Dr. Brandy and everybody can just sort of get ready to chime in here. You know, certain songs bring up certain emotions. Most of the time, we're talking about relationships, you know, but holidays, you know, for I don't want to say it wrong, SDA, seasonal, to say it, Dr. Brandy or Raheem.
Seasonal affective disorder.
Thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Brandy, I'm surprised to hear that you mean people can deal with it in the spring and summer. We presume winter and fall, but Nyell, to close out the point about sound therapy, for someone that doesn't have a bowl, are there sort of some home remedies that people can use?
Absolutely. YouTube University. If you're on here, then you have access to the internet prayerfully. You can literally put it in sound frequency healing, and there are 4-hour-long meditations, sleep meditation frequencies that you can play. That's my first go-to for a person who's interested in this. Janae Eiko put out this really beautiful album throughout this pandemic, but she utilized the same system I was talking about. So I would say, look at the artist, look at the lyrics, and consider that there's a power in words, that words also have resonance, also are vibrational. So if I always am talking to the young people about trap music specifically, like, yeah, you can use trap to play around and play basketball or prep for a game. But if you're trying to prepare for a test, or you're going into a space where you're expected to be de-escalated, trap music is probably not the best thing to play before you walk into that space.
Definitely.
We don't recognize we're being wired.
Definitely. And as you all can see, something, I don't know what got in my eye. So I'm going to pull on Dr. Brandy so I can go off camera real quick and see what's going on. But Dr. Brandy, can you chime in about what you've heard this evening from everyone so far? And again, I can't appreciate enough how you all have come in and just been transparent. I'm learning something new about the sound therapy this evening, but it is definitely important. Dr. Brandy, if you could just step in for me and back me up for 1 second, please.
Yeah, sure. So I guess one thing I'd love to hear from everyone, because we talked about sound therapy and some other things, is what are some of the kind of self-care techniques that you've used to really, again, continue your process? So, you know, Nyell, you mentioned sound therapy. Raheem, what are some things that you have found as you discovered, okay, yes, I do have SAD? And, you know, what are some things that can help? And then, you know, Fabienne, what are some things that not only have helped your daughter, but have helped you so that you can help your daughter and others? So like, what are some of those techniques that you've used similar to the sound therapy? Raheem, I'll turn to you first, and then I give Fabienne some space to talk about some of her self-care techniques.
Sure. So the first thing I notice is my sleeping habits. So usually it comes 12:30 a.m. I'm like, oh, I'm not tired. I want to watch binge watch another Netflix series. So I'll pop a melatonin or two. That way it basically calms me and it makes me fall asleep. In order for me to wake up in the morning, because sometimes it's physically hard to literally roll out of bed and get out. I would have to put my phone across the room and put on a 7:30 alarm clock. That way I would have to get out of bed to go get my phone, because you guys know that alarm clock is annoying. Another thing I do is if I'm feeling, really down in the morning, is I'll do 5 push-ups or I'll do a light stretch. I am a person who dances, so that works for me. But also the one last thing is just to get yourself active. I know it sucks to go to the gym, but like, even if you wanted to take a walk outside, as Nyell saying, nature is really healing. That gets the hormones going, the energy gets pumping from that. What else are the things that I do? If I see my eating habits are going bad, I give myself that day to just indulge in whatever I'm doing. And the next day I'm like, okay, the first thing I have to do is make sure I have a black coffee, no sugar. So that way I set everything off, drink an 8-ounce glass of water. And those are the things that, kind of help me.
I would just jump in. I'm so glad to see that Nyell is talking about music. So what's been helping my daughter, she's into arts, music, and dancing. And you probably hear her in the background singing her lungs out. It'll be 1 o'clock in the morning. She's blasting music. I'll be like, child, you gotta go to bed. So melatonin has been kind of a friend for me, because I have to give it to her, because she's still having had bad habit of sleeping, and her eating as well is all because of medication. So she's like off balance. So music is kind of a therapy for her. So she's doing music with her school. She listens to music on her own. For me, what I've been doing, because I also have my own trauma and my own issues that I'm dealing with as well, not just carrying her, but also my own. Lately, is like sleeping is like, it's not a good thing for me. So I try to watch reading and watch music and things like that, or movies. So when I have a chance, it's like I'll go for a walk. So what I've been doing lately is juicing. So I've been getting a lot of vegetables and fruits, and kind of, go and be in the kitchen and then just trying to do different things and juice it, being it for hours and then doing it for a week. And that kind of, trying to push me to eat healthy, trying to just walk around. And then when I see I really cannot sleep, I just go to all my emails, people that I haven't replied to. So I reply to all of them. So I'm constantly working, constantly doing something. So that kind of, help me that I'm doing something positive. So I'm just not being in that space where I'm all sad. So when that sadness come in, I'll just call a friend that I haven't talked to. So trying to, being for hours, not listening to what the person is going through, but also share my time. It's kind of my therapy session. And I also do my therapy as well too. My daughter do therapy weekly, and then we also do in-home therapy, where it's kind of trying to work for both of us, because sometimes we clash. We always constantly, she's a teenager at this time right now. So it's just like, how a teenager works out. So trying to do all this embracing and getting help and support, where we doing, okay, if you're doing this for this week, this is what your award's going to be. So trying to just see how we can do things together. So that also helped me as well.
Dr. Brandy, thank you so much for stepping in. It wasn't, I know probably Toy and Brandy were looking like, what did somebody say? Because y'all know I can cry at the drop of a pin. But no, something really got in my eye, and I was like, oh my goodness. But Dr. Brandy, thank you. What I've heard from you guys so far, one central theme was you did what works for you. There's no cookie cutter remedy to the things that ail us. Raheem mentioned melatonin to help him sleep. He gives himself that cheat day. You know what I mean? Now I kind of struggled a little bit when you said just plain black coffee. because Java with Jimmy, oh no, there's sugar and and cream and stuff in there. But, you know, I heard from Nyell that sound therapy works for her, and also Fabienne, you know, music as well, and therapy. And then just being flexible with her daughter to understand as well. And, you know, so it was definitely important this evening to hear the individuality of all of our stories. And I'm going to take back a little bit for now, and I'll come back and do some greetings. But Dr. Brandy, if you can sort of just get ready to maybe give us a synopsis, and we'll turn it over to Toy to give her thanks, and also let us know, because I think we have a couple more events coming up for Black History Month this month, and also with the Roxbury Unity Parade. But Dr. Brandy, if you could get ready to give us a synopsis, and then we'll get ready to wrap up. Our guests, be prepared to give your 30 to 45-second words of wisdom to the audience before we wrap up as well. So Dr. Brandy, the floor is yours.
You are on mute, Miss Dr. Brady.
What? Dr. Brandy on mute? There you go.
There you go. Okay. I was struggling. I was like, oh, okay, comments. And then I couldn't find the mute button.
Enjoyed that. I just want to raise a self-care intentional moment that Toy enjoyed, reminding Brandy that her mute was Mike, because we always some. So sorry, DeeDee's cry, internal thing. Sorry.
But no, I mean, I think the thing that is important to remember in this time that we are going through right now, individually and collectively, is that many are struggling, and it's okay to acknowledge and be upfront and forthcoming with our struggles, and also acknowledge and be upfront and forthcoming with what will work for us. Because just like James said, you know, there isn't one prescription for everyone. We are all created uniquely different. And so what will help us get on our road to recovery and finding hope and healing will be different. And so don't think you have to do it one way and that's it. There are many different ways to finding hope and healing for you and for others in your community. That's the first thing. The second thing, for anyone listening, for anyone struggling, please know that we hear you, we see you. You are not alone in this, and you are not the only one struggling. If you are struggling right now, please reach out. There are supports, there are resources available for you. You know, Java with Jimmy, we talk about them every, Mental Health Monday at 2:30, but it's so important to understand that the community is larger than you think. This happens in our community. Black lives matter, Black mental health matters. And so on this month and every month, because we are the fabric of the nation, but just put that out there. But no, really, and my last kind of comment along this is to thank the panelists for sharing their stories. I always learn something. I always find something meaningful in the stories, whether it's Nyell saying, her therapist saying, you have the right to do this. Like I'm gonna use that in different talks. I'm gonna be like, yep, you have the right. Do you hear me, baby? You got the right to your health. Or hearing about Raheem and him talking about the fact of really having to come to terms with what is this? Because this isn't something like we talk about in our family, right? This is not something in our consciousness and in our table talk at dinner. And then, from Fabienne, hearing your story about the young people's struggles and how we need to be attuned to that too, is our young people, and making sure that our young people get the supports that they need, and having more advocates like yourself around the table that can advocate for our young people when the DSM-6 comes out. And, there's some new diagnosis that is going to be ascribed to our young people. And so, I hear so much in our stories. And, like Toy always says, it's such power in sharing our stories. There's such power in listening to our stories. And there's such power in, as a community, trying to find the answers and the ways to support ourselves individually and ourselves collectively. And so I thank you all for listening. I thank you all for sharing. And I can't wait for the next one next week because it's going to be lit. So I'll turn it over to James. Well, I think turn it over to Toy.
Come on, Toy, and give us your outgoing greetings. And Toy doesn't like to talk a lot on camera, but
I don't like to talk a lot, but I do want to say thank you to everyone. I was just so moved, and I don't know ahead of time. None of us know ahead of time what people are going to share. So we're learning everything in real time, and it touches us just like it touches those who are watching. And I want to say, I love how everyone had to find what worked for them. Like with DeeDee's Cry, we always say healing begins with me. Like, you know you better than anybody else, and you know when you're not sleeping the way you're supposed to, when you're not eating the way you're supposed to. So you are the first line of defense for you to start your healing. And so I definitely want to thank everyone for that. For those of you who may not have been here in the beginning, my name is Toy Burton, and I am the founder and executive director of DeeDee's Cry. DeeDee's Cry Suicide Prevention and Family Support is named after my sister, Denita Shayne Morris, who died by suicide when she was 23 in 1986. I do want to send a special thank you to the Boston Public Health Commission for supporting DeeDee's Cry and us getting that grant so we could continue to do the work that we do and supporting the community. If you want to support DeeDee's Cry, you can make a donation on our Facebook page. No, our website. I'm sorry, on our website, deedescry.com. You can follow DeeDee's Cry on Instagram, DeeDee's Cry. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I think it's Burton Toy, but yeah, I don't know how to do that. But I just want to say thank you to Dr. Brandy, to James for his expertise in making this look all professional. But yeah, have I forgotten anything? Oh yeah, like James was saying, so the Roxbury Unity Parade is a sponsor of DeeDee's Cry's event. The Roxbury Unity Parade happens the third Sunday in July. Last year, due to COVID, it was a caravan, but we are planning to blackety black all weekend long in July. It's a weekend thing, the Roxbury Unity Parade weekend. If we have to make adjustments or be a caravan again, we will do that. If you want to be a sponsor of the parade, please go on our website, roxburyunity18.weebly.com. We have an award ceremony coming up March 20th, where we will highlight those that we didn't get to highlight last year because of the pandemic. So definitely look out for that flyer. Please share this video, like DeeDee's Cry Facebook page, so that way you'll get notified whenever we go live. And yeah, thank you.
I think that is it. There's really nothing much more to say. I'll ask our panelists. I will start with Fabienne. If you could give us 30 seconds of words of wisdom.
Thank you. One thing that I would just say, like, let people know is that, you have your story to tell. No one else can tell your story for you. And it's the same thing is like, your child is looking, doesn't matter where, your family is looking upon you to see how you do things. Like Nyell saying, her mother was like a role model for her in the education space. And I always come to the table where I always think about the immigration families, like they don't know how to navigate the school system or either the system here because it's changed so often. And sometimes you don't get the help, you don't get the support. So don't be afraid to cry out, to make noise and to just see whether in your own language so you can get the help and the support. Again, your mental health is what, if you cannot help yourself, you cannot help your family. You have to be stable. You have to be able to just get yourself a point there you can manage and manage the way that you want to be treated. And once you learn the system and once you know that you get the help and the support, help someone else. Because we need to pass the baton to help others, because that's what I'm doing. Someone opened the door for me and helped me, and that's what I'm doing right now and helping those in need. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the words of wisdom and being one of our panelists. And finally, you and I getting to do something formally together after all these years. Nyell, what are 30 seconds of words of wisdom that you would share around mental health while being Black?
So just to be kind to ourselves, to give ourselves grace, to take time for yourself, to get with yourself, especially in the season, right? My biggest advocacy is to just spend at least 10 minutes a day to yourself. Cut the senses out, shut the TV off, maybe play some music, but just sit, check in. One of the questions I'm asking myself is, what condition is my heart in right now? Like, how does my heart feel? So that's my offering to you all.
Well received. That was I received that offering, Jesus. Okay, Brother Raheem, you're going to take us home before I give the last final greeting, sir. Words of wisdom.
Absolutely. I just want to say that you're not alone, that there are people out there who are just like you, suffering from the same thing. I mean, there were talks about mental health issues when I was in high school and growing up, but it's not like it is now. I think it's something that we talk about more now, and there are so many resources out there for you. So tell your friend, tell your mother, tell your cousin your story and what you're going through, and then seek help.
Thank you. It was a pleasure and opportunity. Raheem, thank you so much for that. It was a pleasure and opportunity to host on behalf of DeeDee's Cry, this Mental Health While Black. We thank you all so much for being a part of this. Please share this video. And also keep in mind that we have other events coming up. Follow almost said the wrong thing. Follow the DeeDee's Cry page and also on Facebook and Twitter. Please share this video. And again, thank you all so much for being a part of this tonight. And we shall see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.